Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Gluckstern. I'm the chairman and CEO of Santa Fe Farms. On behalf of South by Southwest and High Grade Hemp Seed, I'd like to welcome you to our fireside chat, even though we don't have a fireplace. But today I'm honored to be joined by Roger Fragua. Roger is the CEO of Cota Holdings. Roger, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Nice to see you. Roger and I know each other.
We do.
We spent some time together. Roger, why don't you give the people watching a little bit of your background and tell them why you're interested to be sitting in this chair today?
Well, I'm really interested to be here because my good friend Stephen invited me to be here. And, it seems like these opportunities to sit with Stephen Gluckstern and to be involved in the conversation, let alone in the industry of something that's so powerful that's emerging, doesn't come around very often. I think business is done daily, obviously, but I think for Indian tribes and Indian people, this is, I think, a really rare but great opportunity. So my very small involvement in this is just to reflect some of the needs and the capacity and the aspirations of Indian people and Indian country. So honestly, truly honored to engage in this conversation with you.
Well, thank you, Roger. Tell the audience a little bit your background and how you got to be in the position representing so many of the tribes and indigenous people in North America.
It's not so much that I represent them as opposed to maybe more generically kind of their generic interest and some of their aspirations. I've dedicated my entire adult career to exclusively working with tribes. And oftentimes when I speak in public settings, I really do. It's an honor to really introduce myself as a farmer because at the core of who I am a farmer. So I grew up as a young child in an adobe home that my father built in 1953 and a place in northwestern New Mexico, Jemez Pueblo. So as a crow flies, it's kind of west of Santa Fe and northwest of Albuquerque, about 6,000 feet elevation, beautiful red sandstones, and we have a river running right through us. So our tribal emergence and our migration story is we emerged in the Four Corner area and we started migrating down through Chaco Canyon and the Chaco and the greater Chaco landscape and complex. 800 AD to 1100 AD, our ancestors were in Chaco. And then after 1100 AD or so, we started migrating to wherever the Pueblos in the Pueblo world started expanding into. And it was all about water, and it was all about farming. And for us, it's really about our corn and our chili. So as a young man, in fact, not even as a young man, as a little boy, I'd sleep on the floor because that's where we could sleep. And my grandfather would walk by and kind of gently nudge you with his foot. I didn't say he would kick me, but he would nudge me with his foot and say, "Get up, the sun's coming up. You have to race the sun." So we'd get up before sunrise and we'd have to go wash our face in the river and then we're up, then we're awake. And we greet the sun in the morning. And so when we greet the sun in the morning, it really is not just a cultural practice. It's not cultural preservation. It's who we are as our existence as a Native people. And our whole life and existence as young people, my sons were raised the same way I was raised, is really connected to the ground. We put our hands in the ground, we put our feet in the ground. There's something about the connection between this person, this ground, this water, this landscape, and it really is who we are. My grandmother used to say that, you could leave, but you're gonna come home. And it's just the wisdom of an elder. She was always right. She's an amazing woman, and it's kind of our community DNA. We're 1,000-year-old farmers. We're 1,000-year-old seed, 1,000-year-old ground, 1,000-year-old water, and we just continue to do that. And I think for us that in our community that we'll continue to do that for the next 1,000 years. My sons are farmers. I'm a farmer. So when I introduce myself, I've done other things besides farm, but I do farm.
Right, it's a wonderful story, and then reminds us Europeans that we're newcomers here in North America, in many ways. So Roger, I know also in your career you spent some time working in big business and helping in the oil and gas industry understand something about Indian land. Talk a minute or two about that.
To my background in terms of business, it really wasn't so much the industry learning from me. Quite honestly, it was me learning from the industry. And I got invited. So I started off working my adult career working for my own tribe. Didn't know anything about tribal governance. And as a unique and distinct sovereign nation, really, truly, honestly, from cradle to grave, there is a very unique regulatory permitting tax advantages around tribal governance. And these tribal governance entities are, they really administer truly honestly, from cradle to grave, everything in existence and taking care of their own people. And the 577 tribes and the nearly 3 million Native people are growing at a 4% population rate. That 4% number doesn't sound like a big number to anybody. 4%, very small number, but compounded over 20 years, we're doubling our populations. And keeping up with that kind of population, that dynamic population growth, is a true challenge for our tribal leadership. So as a much younger man, I got thrown into our tribal administration quite by accident, honestly. It was never my plan, Stephen. If left up to my own devices, I would have done something much different than my career path, but I think the Creator had a different plan in mind for me. So I started working for my tribe as the tribal administrator, and then got recruited to national tribal organizations around energy and natural resources, not just energy, but natural resources. And I got recruited by Enron, and I didn't know what Enron was. It was the world's largest energy company. I didn't know that. And they had called and asked me if I would come down to Houston and visit with them. And I said, well, sure, because my sister lived in Houston. I said, well, great. Here's a free plane ticket for me to get down to Houston and go see my sister. And I did that. And when I was there, I walked up and greeted, and I was introduced to Ken Lay and Jeff Skilling, and on the introductory visit, and they offered me a position at Enron, and I told them no, I wasn't looking for a job. I already had 2 jobs, and I've got 4 kids and 2 horses and a field, and I'm pretty busy. And I guess Enron didn't take no for an answer from much of anybody. But I did go back and I talked to my tribal leaders, my tribal elders, and I told them that I saw this huge building and this big company, and they showed me the trading floor and all the kinds of very sophisticated things that Enron was doing at that time. That was in 1997. And I went to go work for Enron. And I remember, Stephen, I'm almost embarrassed to tell you, but it's true. I sat on the 35th floor, and full-grown man with 4 kids. And I looked out, and it's hard to think about it now, but I looked out and I saw this huge city. It's the 4th largest city in the United States. And I missed my field. I missed my family. And it's because I went at the wrong time. I went in October. In October, when you work your whole summer and you plant your field, you don't plant your field, you plant children. The corn is your children. You take care of them like your children. You nurture them, you water them, you protect them. And when I got the call to go to Enron, I went in September, October, and I just felt this huge void in my heart that I was leaving my field. I had given the field to my uncle. I told him, you don't have to do much. I already did all the work. It's just harvest now. And he was very happy to receive that. And when I got that call to go to Enron, and I went down there, and I was sitting there, and it was a very emotional time for me because even now, thinking about it, I had left my field behind. So I'm a farmer. And I was sitting there in my office, and I was a full-grown man. I was crying in my office. I shut the door, and I just felt this void in my heart that, what am I doing? I'm doing something wrong. I shouldn't be doing this. Somehow they offered me some money, and I don't know if I was doing this for the money. I thought I was just, and a tribal leader called me. At that moment, when I was feeling really low, a tribal leader called me and said, hey, how you doing? I said, is this Pete? He said, yes. He was our war chief. He was the head of our tribe and the cultural leader of our tribe. He said, hey, I just want to check on you. How you doing? I said, Pete, how did you get my phone number? I didn't leave anybody my phone number. I just left. And he called me and said, I just want to tell you one thing. I said, yeah, what is it? He said, you're not there for you. You're there for us. And I want you to learn. And he gave me back my heart. and he gave me back my courage. He gave me my confidence. And then I was on a mission from that. So when he told me that, I'm not there for me, I'm there for us, I went in to learn everything I could learn.
So Roger, it is a wonderful background, obviously, and thank you for sharing all that.
Sure.
Obviously, one of the things that we're interested in talking about, both today, but just in general, is the notion of whether the cannabis and hemp industry might be another avenue here to begin to think about how Indian country can interact in ways that are more productive and more fair, and ultimately, I think, benefit both Indigenous peoples as well as the business people who support that. One of the things you and I have talked about a number of times, and I think the audience would be interested, is just a quick note on some of the challenges that Indigenous people face today, and then why you and I both and others begin to think that hemp might be able to be part of a beginning of a solution to at least one of those problems.
When you start thinking about new and emerging industries like hemp, and you start thinking about what this could represent to Indian country. I think Indian country as a whole, as we look through the windshield of our future, but I think we use the rearview mirror a lot, and we start thinking about the historical context of emerging industries and opportunities. You think about the extractive industries like mining and oil and gas and coal, those kinds of things, and what that represented to us. 30% of the Navajo reservation right now in 2021 does not have access to electricity in these United States. However, they sit on top of coal, natural gas, oil, pipelines. They sit underneath large transmission lines, and they don't have access to electricity. I think the difference between this and oil and gas, between hemp and oil and gas and gaming, it is natural. We recognize the benefits of indigenous plants and indigenous medicine. We've had associations with hemp and other medicines that we still use today. I think the shape of the leaf is really interesting, because when you think about the association with hemp and marijuana, I think that we have been taught by Western governments, by Western laws, and by Western religion that marijuana is a bad plant. And, some can debate that, I guess, all they'd like to. But I think the association based on the shape of the leaf of the plant, somehow hemp gets associated with marijuana and all the complexities around law and social aspects of the simple shape of the leaf. But for me, I think it really represented a great opportunity. I think looking at this in terms of a scaled approach and kind of getting into hemp, especially from the industrial side, because I think for us, housing is a very significant issue. That 4% population growth I was talking to you about, housing is a very significant challenge for us. Overcrowded housing, multiple generations in one house. But I think that hemp really represents not just cultivating plants that we're very familiar with in terms of farming, but really cultivating ideas and cultivating new businesses and coming in a fully integrated approach, as you're suggesting, really makes a lot of sense to Indian country. We vetted the ideas already, and I think there's a lot of interest in looking at this on a more holistic approach, as opposed to just us as simple growers, and looking at our 53 million acres, our senior water rights, things like that. I think the way that you're approaching Indian country is much more respectful, coming in as true partners and looking at all aspects of hemp and the hemp industry.
So thank you for that. I wish there was a little more by planning and not by luck. We ended up in the right place, I think. But one of the things, obviously, that's interesting to us, and when at Santa Fe Farms, when we think about the hemp plant, we think about sort of ideas first. What are the ideas that go behind this? Then we talk about growth. How do you grow? How do you grow the plant, but how do you grow ideas and all of that as well? And then ultimately for us, it's about impact. Because it doesn't matter if you don't have impact. And I think that when you and I first got introduced and began thinking about it, really struck home with me when you talked about the issues of housing. And not the least of which is think about the fact that, as you pointed out, in 20 years, you have to double the amount of housing to just live the way you live today, which on the reservation is not the greatest. We know that because of the nature of what's happening. So a huge need and opportunity to have impact in housing. And I think that has led me and my colleagues to think about how can we think about the industrialization of the plant with respect to housing? There's other parts of it, and make that not only just the idea that you could use this, but actually we could grow this product. We could create the factories and create the jobs. And one of the early things that Roger and I talked about that you mentioned was this idea of building human capital, not just a plant capital. And the idea that it could be that this could be, if you think about gaming, as you said, gaming and alcohol and tobacco, why not think of hemp as the next in this version, but something that really has a circular economy to it and that can bring not only the impact of the wealth associated with gaming, but rather addressing one of the fundamental issues that you've talked about on Indian land, not only in the US, but also in Canada.
Yeah, see, when you think about what we talked about earlier was the 53 million acres of federal Indian land called Indian country and the senior water rights, 20% of America's fossil fuel or conventional fuel resources, not an insignificant number. In that 4% population growth as the internal demand for market of goods and services. Housing as being one of those centerpieces for potential development. But to have all that in one place. So when you think about the grow, the processing, the development, the factories, looking at the kind of making our own hemp bricks for our own housing, boy, are you talking about impact. So we can talk about all the resources we'd like, but the greatest resource is the human resource. So the 4% population growth, focusing in on our youth. The youth, I think, are leading the way in this particular sector. There's a lot of demand by the youth, the native youth right now, to get engaged in the hemp industry. And I think there are those that are looking at certain sectors, oils and things like that. But I think that to look at this as an industrial insulator for our, really well insulated walls and strong material to build homes out of, I think it makes a lot of sense. But really engaging our greatest resource, which is our human resource, that's a renewable resource. We're growing 4% per year. We're the fastest growing sector of the U.S. population by race. And getting them engaged, that truly is our greatest resource.
So talk a little bit, Roger, about some of the challenges, because in doing that, I mean, one of the biggest issues that from an outsider looking in has been this issue of trust and whether or not Indigenous people in the end, based on the history and for plenty of good reason, look across and say, how can they integrate with new businesses? How do they develop the trust of people who don't come from their community and who have betrayed that trust, as you pointed out, for many, many years and many, many times?
So, see, when you think about, you just spoke Indian. He said looking from the outside in, but it's not you looking from the outside in. It's always us looking from the outside in. We've been looking from the outside from every sector, every form of economic development, every form of education, every form of housing, every form of benefit, every form of politic. We're always on the outside looking in. And I think when those folks who are on the outside looking in, they want to study our customs, our traditions, our elders, those that are buried in the ground, the archaeology. And I think that this is a great opportunity for us to be not either one of us to be looking from the outside, but us together to be looking in and to see those impacts and what is potential for those impacts. I think that's really this opportunity. I mean, when I think about that 4% population growth and those young people that are coming behind, the impacts to housing and the economy, just those two alone would be amazing. So I really think that this is a great opportunity to think about some of those challenges, because this isn't just a solution to economic development. This isn't just a solution to housing. This is a solution to economic development and housing and this and that. It puts our it puts our people to work, it puts our land to work, it puts our water to work. So I think there's multiple benefits, the way that you're approaching this, and I think it makes a whole lot of sense, and we're very excited to be here with you.
And we're excited as well. Let me ask, take a different angle. Are there some models that we can look to in terms of development on Indian land, in terms of other whether it be I know there's a slaughterhouse and there's some meat process. Are there some other models that we might look to help inform us as we think about how hemp and Indian nation and Indian lands can be woven together?
I think there's a lot of different business models for sure, and there's many that are very successful. You think about the Southern Ute tribe, and they're great models for joint venturing with industry. You think about the models for Indian gaming and how they've become so successful. But I think the true model is very organically and very naturally. I think it's really based on trust. And I think if you have trust in the room where we can switch sides at the table at any point in time, and I think that's the best model. And the best model is what's the common good for all of us, and start working at that. So oftentimes I think when you start thinking about business models and trying to replicate business models, I think those models really are based on two human beings coming together, two entities coming together, two CEOs coming together, two groups coming together. And if they have trust, that's the model. That is the ingredient. From that mutual trust that's at the table, I think you can build lots of models and say, oh, well, that model was successful. It wasn't that model as much as it was these two people coming together and really learning to trust each other. That's the model. Right. And I think it's really kind of building a model based on trust.
And Roger, you talked about the 577 tribes, recognized tribes in the United States, plus there's some other large number, I know, of First Nations in Canada.
650 in Canada.
650. Mm-hmm. So you're talking less about 1,100 or so.
Yeah.
Different customs, different cultures, commonality, but differences.
Very different.
Do you think one model is going to fit all, or do you think we'll have to develop multiple models to sort of figure out how to bring this opportunity in front of Indian land?
When I go to Indian country, and that's in any city, but when I go to Indian country, even I'm a guest. I don't know the language, I don't know the customs and the traditions, I don't know the governance. So I think that in terms of that diversity, there's not one model. I think the model is trust.
One of the things that I find so interesting about the hemp plant is really the characteristics it has with respect to how it treats the soil and how it treats the air, and the fact that it's really a regenerative kind of plant, and particularly looking at the issues of sustainability. I think when I was in school, since we were small boys studying, the history of the indigenous people in America, one of the things that was driven home, I think, for all of us was that the native people of this country thought a lot about the environment in which they live, that there was one Mother Earth, and if you treated her poorly, it was not going to function. So I'm interested in sort of the sustainability part of the hemp story. Is that something that particularly resonates with you, and you think that will be helpful as we talk to Indigenous people?
Yeah, I think sustainability, I think there's a number of, words that get tossed around, and certainly I think sustainability is certainly in fashion today in all across the planet, especially in these United States. When you start thinking about sustainability, and what does that really mean about sustainability? I think when you start thinking about the life cycle of the Greater Chaco Complex, since 1100, we left Chaco in 1100. Those walls are still standing. So when you think about the life cycle of a modern building, 30 years, 50 years maybe, you think about the Pueblo connection to true sustainability. It really is more about water than it is about buildings. It's more about water than it is about land. And we know that water is being really challenged right now in terms of quantity and quality both. And I think that this plant, it's a magical plant. And the plant, because it's different uses and applications that can be used towards sustainability, in the conservation of water. So I think when you start thinking about our affinity to sustainability, and you think about sustainability in relation to EPA, the environmental movement. I don't know if you remember, but it was back in the 70s, they had Iron Eyes Cody rolling down that polluted stream, and he's got the teardrop. That started, and that actually started the Environmental Protection Agency. And it was an Indian motif or an Indian design or person. So somehow we get attached to being the icon of the sustainability. But I think when you think about that as an Indian person, I don't think about sustainability on a daily basis. I think about this is our way of life. I get up early, I go farm, I try and conserve water, I try and interact with soil and Mother Earth, I try and tread lightly. So for us, I think it's more of a way of life without really thinking about sustainability. But I think if you look back through the rearview mirrors I talked about, sustainability is important. I think we do try and pass that on. But it's not like a class, it's not like a Wikipedia where you try and go in and it's like, well, what can we do that's more sustainable today than what we did yesterday? I think it's more a way of life than anything else. But yeah, sustainability, I guess, is very important. And this plant represents, I think, a whole lot of sustainability and as a solution, not just toward regenerative soil, but toward water conservation and a lot of other things.
Great. And although I usually hate when people ask me this question, I'm going to ask it to you anyhow. But when you get old like that I am, and you're catching up with me, how do you think, Roger, about your own legacy? What would you like to be remembered for when people look back on your lifetime?
Well, I don't know. I don't have a good answer. I haven't really thought about that. I think about those that have impacted my life. My grandmother, amazing. My father, my mother. I just lost my uncle 2 days ago. He was 93. When I think about those that have gone on and what they mean to me, I just hope that those coming, my grandchildren and those that are unborn, I think that our voices and our footprints are placed here on this planet. Sometimes I yell, sometimes I scream, sometimes I sing, sometimes I dance. And when I do that in a way that those that are unborn will know that I was here. And I think that if we all live that way, that we want those that are not even born to know that we were here and we can make a difference. I think that really is that's our role as humans, and we're all the same.
Roger, let me thank you again for your really insightful comments here. And I know that, speaking on behalf of the firm that I represent in Santa Fe Farms and High Grades, that our goal here is, of course, to always return capital and make money for our shareholders. This underlies capitalism.
Sure.
But it's very much balanced with trying to have an impact in a positive way, whether that be environmentally or that be socially. And I think that we are tremendously excited to try to make that effort to build that trust with Indian country, because I think there's an opportunity here that will benefit us all if we can be successful at that. And I thank you for taking the time to come and share your thoughts and ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time today. Please join us at our next fireside chat with Brando Crespi. Brando will be talking about sustainability. Brando, who is a fascinating gentleman, will talk a little bit about his history, including the fact that his family's been in the textile business, something near and dear to the hemp plant, for over 500 years in Italy. Look forward to seeing you then. Thank you. Thank you, Roger.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to this.
No.